Today Global. Hello and welcome to India Today Global. The big news that we're getting today is that Israel is claiming that the chief of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, has been killed. This is officially a claim that has been made by the Israeli Defense Forces as well as by the official account of the government of Israel. It has sparked off a range of reactions, something that has been talked about a lot in light of recent tensions between Israel and Hezbollah, which is a militant group in Lebanon. But joining us now to talk about this explosive news, the potential death of Hassan Nasrallah. Remember that the Hezbollah itself has not confirmed yet whether its chief is in fact dead. Joining us now is Kabir Taneja, a fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, someone who tracks West Asia very closely. Tell us a little bit about Hassan Nasrallah, who he is, why his death potentially would matter so much to what's going on in the conflict in West Asia. Kabir, thank you so much for joining us. Just take it away. What do you make of this news coming in that Israel is saying that Hassan Nasrallah has been killed, presumably by Israeli forces?
Thanks, Shashank. So, I mean, look, this is a big news, right? And for multiple reasons. I think first and foremost, we have to remember that the conflict that we are seeing in Lebanon right now. Of course, the first one was in Gaza. Now that the IDF thinks that militarily Hamas has been defeated for the time being, or their at least capacities have been completely sort of obliterated right now, they can concentrate a little bit more on the northern front with Hezbollah. And the Israelis have been in conflict or at war with both Hezbollah and Hassan Nasrallah for since the 80s. But Nasrallah has been at the top of the ladder of the hierarchy of the group for almost 25, 30 years now. So he's been this character that has been a big part of Israeli security thinking and political thinking for a long period of time. So going back to the 90s, when they, just for your audience sake, nothing else, assassinating either Hamas leaders or Hezbollah leaders has been part of the Israeli toolkit for a long time. So what we are seeing is actually nothing strategically new, right? We are seeing the political decision being mobilized to take out these actors now. But strategically and even intelligence-wise and so on and so forth, as far as planning is concerned, these are plans that have not been developed after October last year. When Hamas conducted the terror attack. These are plans probably that have been developed and honed for almost for 15, 16 years at least, where now they've gotten the green flag from the political dispensation to go ahead. So Nasrallah has been that character that has been synonymous with Israeli security and political thinking for a long period of time. So his potential assassination, as you said, Hezbollah is yet to confirm the news. But considering there is news floating around of his daughter, who used to often travel with him everywhere, being killed yesterday, the probability is quite high that Nasrallah has been killed. There is complete blackout on communications from the Hezbollah side. So the chances of the news being true is quite high. So from that aspect and the aspect of the Hezbollah-Israel tensions going back decades, this is certainly a very, very significant moment. But also, this is a moment where we are a bit in the gray area now, as far as Lebanon is concerned. Now someone has to step in instead of Nasrallah. Now, who is that going to be is the big question.
Right. Could I ask you a little bit to just break down for our audiences a little bit? You already hinted at it, but could you talk a little bit about who Hassan Nasrallah is, what his rise to the top has been, where does he come from, what does he believe exactly, in what direction has he steered Hezbollah, what is his international reputation, shall we say? I remember when Ismail Hania had been killed, we'd had that conversation about who Hania was, how he fitted into the broader architecture of Hamas as compared to someone like Yahya Sinwar. So could I ask you to start with just, explain to the audience, just all you need to know about Hassan Nasrallah?
Well, it's actually oddly, or maybe not that oddly, a very simple history that Nasrallah has. Nasrallah has been, since his youth, aligned with the sort of Shia mobilization against Israel. We have to remember that the patronage, Hamas and Iran, for example, as patrons, still had a distance between them, right? It was more of a marriage of convenience. Hamas, you have to remember, was a Sunni organization, as we talked about last time. Hezbollah is something that, Iran actively incubated and built and honed. So it is almost sort of their project since the 80s to bog the Israelis down, but also to have a level of Shia supremacy in Lebanon. you have to remember that 60% or 65% of the population is divided down the line in Lebanon between Shia and Sunnis. So there has always been that sort of uh, just more than Israel, there has been that sort of fight between the Sunni Arab world and Iran on control of the polity of Lebanon and how its politics is going to be. We have to also remember that one thing that has happened under Nasrallah in Lebanon is that there was a transformation of Hezbollah into a political entity, into a political party. It went through elections. It came into parliament. It in 2022 it was booted out of parliament. That also showed that there is disgruntledness amongst the public against Hezbollah also, and what kind of actor Hezbollah has been in Lebanon. Till a certain level, Hezbollah has also disallowed any strong political dispensation to take over Beirut for a long period of time now. Right. So now that we raise the question that what is next. Ideally, a strong opposition, hypothetical opposition, would step in right now and try to take control, because Nasrallah was that important a player in Lebanese politics. But there is no such opposition. So even Lebanon is in as we call it, is a country in suspension right now,
Right.
where there are no core political entities that can enter this fray and sort of stake claim and try to, let's say, we'll try to mitigate the current situation now that Nasrallah is gone. So Nasrallah
Understood.
was that deep a root in Lebanese politics. So from his sort of start, so to speak, 3 decades ago to his apparent demise now, there was a lot riding on him as far as Hezbollah was concerned and as far as the Shia population in Lebanon was concerned.
Right. I just want to ask you, just out of curiosity, I opened by talking about the fact that this is, potentially because Israel has claimed it. Do you think Israel would claim something like this without a very, very high level of certainty? We had saw some reports. Reuters, I think, put something out talking about how, senior sources in Hezbollah are saying that, we have not been able to establish contact since about Friday, for a couple of days now. Do you think Israel would put something like this out if they do not have a high level of certainty that they have in fact got their man?
Look, I probably not, right? But there is always that 10% gap that it can be sort of the other way around. Also, it can be possible that
Right.
Hassan Nasrallah is just very injured right now.
Hmm.
There has been no the fact that there has been no communication from Hezbollah to try and retain the narrative away from Israel on the demise of their leader, sort of pushes the argument towards the fact that he is probably dead. He didn't make the strikes, because otherwise I think the channel of communications that Hezbollah has would have mobilized. We saw some reports yesterday in Iranian news channels basically saying that in Farsi it came out that Hassan Nasrallah is safe. And over
Hmm.
the past 24 hours, they've also rescinded those reports, right? They're
Right.
not continuing with those reports. Instead, they're quoting AP and Reuters from the US that they are saying
Hmm.
that Israel has claimed that he has passed away. So there's clearly a
Sure.
block in communications.
Hmm.
Now, I would be very surprised. It has happened before. There have been sort of certain. I think one of the people that Israel claimed along with Nasrallah in this strike was also claimed dead in July.
Hmm.
So it's a possibility, but
Possible.
at this level, I would be very surprised if Israel has jumped the gun and just announced it without doing its proper checks.
Due diligence, right? Could I ask you a little bit about where this leaves us in this broader conflict between Israel and Hezbollah in terms of what's been happening just over the last couple of weeks? About 600 people killed in airstrikes over the last week. We saw that pager attack that took place. Could you just put that in context as well? I know you already hinted at how you're seeing this, which is that, hey, Hamas has been degraded significantly as a military actor, and therefore it frees up the Israelis to look towards the northern border. Could you just put in context, what this would mean in the context of what we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks in terms of rising tensions on the northern border? There was a lot of conversation and discussion just a couple of days ago that the chief of the Israeli Defense Forces, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, said that we might go in on the ground for a ground invasion. Could you just put all of this in context, bookended with this death of Nasrallah, in terms of what Israel is planning to do with Lebanon?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are no easy answers for Israel either, right? Any ground invasion means that the probability of you suffering losses also is there. Now, that Nasrallah is died does not necessarily mean that the cadre of Hezbollah is non-existent now. What we don't know is how is that cadre that has fought for the Hezbollah for a long period of time is going to behave. Where are they going to take the commands from? If there is no command structure, what kind of fighting will they be able to do? We have seen that over the past 48 to 72 hours, Hezbollah also launching ballistic missiles towards Israel. That's opening a new front because they've not used that kind of ammunition before. So Hezbollah was prepared for a
Right.
war, right? As was Israel, and that has been the case again, as I said, for the past few decades. It's not that they were never prepared to take each other on.
Right.
But losing your chain of command and hierarchy is a significant loss to Hezbollah. Now, we have been talking a lot about what does this mean for the region. Is this a regional war now? Is this going to spill over, and so on and so forth? I think there's some very interesting points here to
Mm.
consider when we're talking about the spillover factor. First and foremost, it will only be a truly regional war if either Iran or one of
Mm.
the Arab states decide that they will militarily back Hezbollah now or Hamas now. Unless that happens, this is not going to be a regional war. It is going to be sort of southern Lebanon, Beirut, and Gaza on this side. The
Mm.
second thing it's important to remember is that countries like Syria, which are in flux for a long period of time, have been the strategic depth for Iran for a long period of time, have not said anything yet. They're trying to not, the Bashar al-Assad's government, which owes its longevity through the civil war in Syria to the Russians and the Iranians, is not stepping up right now and saying we are going to take on Israel on behalf of what has happened to Hezbollah. That's a very interesting point to go.
Mm.
The third point is that Iran has also built a lot of militias in Iraq. But a lot of these militias have also done deals with the Iraqi government and the US at times that they will not attack American installations and bases in Iraq. So, you have to remember that all these, the axis of resistance, so we call it, has only so much depth in what they would do for Iran. Now that Iran is not clear about what its level of deterrence is, right? Whether
Mm.
it is going to sort of attack Israel or not, means that there is these smaller groups are not completely sure if they have the Iranian military backing or not. Are they going to mobilize if they mobilize? Or are they going to mobilize by themselves? And Iran will say, well, we are not going to enter a proper confrontation over this. So these are a lot of questions that are happening or would be happening in my mind between the regional sort of construct that has been created against Israel over the past couple of years. But as far as bigger players are concerned, such as Saudi Arabia or UAE, they are much more concerned in preserving their economic goals and designs for the future. Right? They
Mm.
are they are still moving towards those changes that they're envisioning for themselves for the next 20-30 years. They don't want to get embroiled in this,
Right.
and they would prefer to be neutral actors that condemn Israeli action. But at some level, I think they will not be too bothered by the fact that Hamas and Hezbollah have been degraded by the Israelis.
Understood. Right. Could I ask you then just one final piece of perspective, because I know you have to head out. We've seen conversations about from France and the United States. They tried to push a 21-day ceasefire on the Israelis. The Israelis made clear that they would be having none of that. What is the calculation now for Israel? They've of course they're fighting this war in Gaza. They're now looking towards the north. Big walkout from Benjamin Netanyahu's speech at the United Nations, though I'm sure he was used to something like that at this point in time. Could I ask you a little bit about what the theory is now for Israel moving forward with this? What are they hoping to get? Do you sense from these attacks in Lebanon? Do you think they'll stop now, or that have got Hassan Nasrallah, or and will accept some conversation about a ceasefire? Or how does this devolve? What is the theory for as everyone's talking about in
I
terms of
mean,
the day after?
yeah, I think that's a very good question because the ceasefire, till I think two days ago, or even till when Netanyahu was about to speak at the UNG in New York, the Americans were still talking about a ceasefire. That clearly that the Israelis had actually not bought into. but had sort of used to make sure that they keep the US pacified, and almost on the side while they are preparing these kind of tactical incursions into the stronghold of Hezbollah. So and they, I think that they have also gamed the fact that the US would not want to be seen as abandoning a critical ally at this point of time. I think the US is already getting a lot of flack for not standing up or not coming to the forefront of some of these conversations militarily. Saudi Arabia being one country that is hedging its bets now after 2019, when the US did not come to its aid when the oil refineries were attacked by the
So all
Houthis.
of kinds of attacked, yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's some recalculation, and the Israelis have played the US a little bit by ultimately doing what they wanted to do, based on the fact that they didn't expect the US to completely freeze or dry out military supplies to Israel. These military supplies to Israel are very critical. I don't think Israel will be able to do all this without those coming in regularly and sustainably. So and as so and on the political track, I'm not sure. Now that let's say the Hezbollah hierarchy going from Nasrallah down, 95% of them have been eliminated. Now, whether Israel is happy with just a degradation of their military capacity, which, by the way, can be rebuilt and will probably be rebuilt in the long term if there is no political track in parallel running to it. Right now, there is no political track running to it. There is a military track running to it. Now, the military track has succeeded, in my view, at least. But considering there is no political track, I'm not sure how this will be 10 years down the line or 15 years down the line, because the core of the crisis, which is the Palestine issue, is not going anywhere anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand, and it's very interesting that you should say that, because we've seen indications in just the last couple of weeks and months. Israel, of course, refusing to endorse the two-state solution in the Knesset. Increasingly, this sense that Israeli politics has become far more extreme. Do you have before you go, a parting thought on that as well, on the domestic politics in Israel around something like a two-state solution? Countries like India, of course, have batted for it, but increasingly a sense
Yeah.
from people who are coming back from Israel are saying that, look, it seems like a non-starter now with where Israel is at this point in time.
See, the problem here is that the extreme groups, the ideologically extreme groups, whether it's Hezbollah in Lebanon, or the far right now, which is becoming increasingly more powerful in Israel, at some level, at some point, have come into the fray by the blessing of the public. Right. So even Hezbollah fought elections, got some sway into the parliament. The far right in Israel has fought election, has come in with Netanyahu, arm in arm to form the current government. So it that makes it much more complicated when it comes to let's say coming to some sort of ceasefire negotiations, where you have to give up some political positioning to the other party so that you can come into the common ground and have a negotiation. Now the other problem here is, one of the conversations that needs to be had is that what kind of, let's say if there is a two-state solution that is implemented, right? I mean, that's a very far away thought, but I'm just for the sake of discussion. What kind of government is going to be there in Palestine? Is it going to be something that is like Hamas or worse than Hamas? Then the tactical part doesn't change. The war will continue, just on a more formalized agreement, I presume. Right. So that conversation, that the fact that what kind of Palestine are we looking at, what kind of dispensation in Palestine we are looking at, is it still going to be completely hostile towards Israel, would not solve anything. So some of these conversations will need to happen side by side when we're talking about a two-state solution, but none of these conversations at this point of time, at least, are taking place.
Understood. Kabir Taneja at the Observer Research Foundation, someone who tracks West Asia extremely closely, telling us about the presumed death of Hassan Nasrallah at the hands of Israel, what this means for Hezbollah, the militia that controls large parts of Lebanon, as well as what this means for what we're seeing in West Asia more generally. Thank you so much, Kabir, for joining us, and thank you for watching India Today Global. We will keep you updated with the latest on this story, as well as coverage on what is happening in West Asia.